Sustainability, the latest Market Talk interview in Mead's video interview series. Today we're going to be talking about sustainable buildings and green buildings, and I'm delighted to be joined by George Mitri, who is the president for Honeywell Building Technologies in the Middle East, Turkey and Africa. Welcome, George. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Richard, and delighted to be here with you for an exciting discussion.
Thank you. Now, this is a huge topic. You know, the world is focused on reducing carbon footprint and removing waste, in increasing efficiency, and you know, investment now is being driven by environmental, societal, and governance criteria. So, a massive topic. Green buildings themselves have been around as a concept and as an issue in this region for many years. So what is new? What is changing? What are the trends that you are seeing across the different industry verticals and across the region when it comes to driving building efficiency?
Question, Richard. And I mean, to start with, buildings represent the majority of the electricity and energy consumption, and we spend more than 60% of our time in buildings. So a very integral part of our life is how do we now take the space that we operate in and then transform it and make it more sustainable. And I can think of two main trends. A number one trend is a bit of a push, and the second one is a bit of a pull. The first one, it's a push through the government agencies. We see more and more regulations. We witness that here in the region to have sustainability and really energy efficiency in buildings, part of the visions laid out by the various countries. And we see a pull, and this pull is happening from the actual users and developers of these buildings. If I look at the push, I mean, we have multiple green building councils established in the UAE, in Egypt, in Qatar. We have Mustadam in Saudi Arabia. We see in the vision of the UAE, the goal is to achieve zero carbon buildings by 2050, a huge goal, but certainly achievable. But we also see, for example, already 64 million square meter of built up area in the UAE adhere to the local green building regulation. So there is quite a progress happening in that space. Now, from a pull perspective, you look at the users in the buildings, and a lot of us are becoming more and more conscious about the environment and sustainability. And they are demanding, the occupants of the building, be it your residential or your commercial or retail, or even your office space, we're demanding more and more sustainable approaches and solutions to be deployed in these spaces. And then if you look at the developers of these buildings, now it's becoming more of a value proposition, a differentiator to state that my building is net zero, my building is adopting the latest technology, my building is using, for example, energy efficient lighting, or deploying some systems for HVAC cooling. So these two coming together, along with some of the certification coming from the for example, certification agencies, they are putting us in a very good shape.
And just, you know, you've made the point that we've got the push factors coming from the policymakers, from the top down and from the visions, and we've got the pull factors coming from the let's call them the customers. In your experience, are property developers, are architects, are building users, are they responding to those factors? You know, the technology is there, the policy is there, the demand is there. Presumably, we are seeing a significant shift, therefore, in the move to green buildings and sustainable buildings.
Oh, certainly. I mean, if you think about it, a decade ago, architects would be stating a flagship development where you would be aligning the architecture of the building to be friendly with the sunlight, to have reflections, to have energy efficient measures. And that was just the flagship at that time. If you look at it nowadays, it's becoming part of every single development. I'm not saying at full scale, but certainly the standards and the specification are now driving in that direction across the board.
And just, you've made the point that we've got the push factors coming from the policymakers, from the top down and from the visions, and we've got the pull factors coming from the let's call them the customers. In your experience, are property developers, are architects, are building users, are they responding to those factors? The technology is there, the policy is there, the demand is there. Presumably, we are seeing a significant shift, therefore, in the move to green buildings and sustainable buildings.
Oh, certainly. I mean, if you think about it, a decade ago, architects would be stating a flagship development where you would be aligning the architecture of the building to be friendly with the sunlight, to have reflections, to have energy efficient measures. And that was just the flagship at that time. If you look at it nowadays, it's becoming part of every single development. I'm not saying at full scale, but certainly the standards and the specification are now driving in that direction across the board.
So if we look at it from the point of view of what contribution can people make to an organization's sustainability? So from an investor point of view, there is this strong drive for ESG criteria in investments. And from government and corporate point of view, there's the need to reduce carbon footprint. So what potential exists for building owners, for building operators, and for building occupants to actually make a difference to an organization's sustainability targets?
Great question, because if you think of the stakeholders in any retail or commercial building, you have the occupants, you have the operators, and you have the owner or developer. Each of them have a big role to play. I mean, from the occupants, it's looking at how do you operationally go in the space that you're living in and ensure that you are in a healthy environment, you are having the right working space or the right experience. If you're visiting a certain, you're not walking into a let's say a movie theater and it's too cold, it has the right ambient temperature. So the occupant themselves, the experience is driving that change on its own. If you look at the operators, they are now looking at every single stone and they don't want to keep it, they want to turn it around and make sure that they are leveraging the technology, they are optimizing their operating costs and providing the highest level of service to these occupants. And if you look at the actual developers or owners, for them, it's a brand. It's about being a good corporate citizen. It's about providing a unique value proposition. It's about positioning themselves as the company or the developer that would provide thoughtful thinking and solutions for the occupants and users of these buildings. I mean, in a recent survey that we've done with Wakefield Research, around 60% of the operators believe that short-term change is needed in these buildings, and around 30% of them believe air quality, which is now becoming more and more important, especially that we live in the COVID era. This is becoming important because for us, touchless access, making sure that contact tracing is there, making sure that we live, all of us, working from home, and now we're back to normal. So this new normal has to come also with certain measures, and this is what we learned from the survey results, that everybody is looking into these solutions.
Very interesting. I think it seems to me that we are at quite an important turning point, and perhaps COVID has accelerated that. Where the occupant well-being factor, the atmospheric conditions or environmental conditions, as well as the ESG criteria and the hybrid working concept with working from home. So technology, and particularly digital technology, is absolutely key now. We've talked about digital transformation for many years, and it feels like in this region we've perhaps been a little bit behind but now we're really accelerating things and catching up. So how do you see the role of digital transformation contributing to building sustainability over the next 10, 20 years in this region?
I mean, we can't talk about the future without having the right enablers. And I think luckily for us, the technology and the building space have moved quite fast and even faster during the COVID period. If you think of a building historically, I mean, to start with, you'll have the control room and the parking next to the water tank. And then if you walk into a control room of a building, you'd see that you have multiple systems. Each system is siloed, do not talk to each other. But not only they're siloed, what you get out of the systems is indicators. In particular, alarm, if there's a shutdown, you see the red or green color, and not much two-way of a communication and not much analytics. And what happened in the last I will put it, less than a decade, we see that these systems are now converging into one single platform. And when doing so, we're now able to bring data analytics, some AI and machine learning, and we're able to deploy the right technology. Now, not only the platform is important, but what we've seen in the technology is now the devices are becoming smart. I mean, we have semiconductors pretty much everywhere now. And what historically was wired can be wireless now today. What was before more of a transmission unit became much more two-way communication. So now you're able to drive set point for the cooling, for example. You can manage your lighting, you can manage your elevators, escalators. You can manage your maintenance of the key mechanical and electrical equipment, but all came together. And then you can take historical trends. If you look at the external heat level, you can have the right set points. You can look at the occupants' behavior and users' behavior to determine what time people go out of lunch, what time do they come to the office, what kind of set points do I want to have. If we look at the hospitality industry, what time is check-in, right? And then you start working the right indicators and leverage this machine learning to be able to provide, one, a better and sustainable kind of operation that yields operational benefits and savings, two, a much enhanced user experience or occupant experience. So certainly technology is there. And then what we've seen in the region, I mean, multiple projects are now calling for net zero buildings, buildings of the future, smart buildings. I mean, the green building councils that I mentioned, they're all putting forward standards that now becomes the new way of how you approach buildings of the future. So it's happening everywhere.
Yeah, so you described the potential of machine learning and artificial intelligence on smart buildings to be, to predictively manage the buildings more efficiently. And you mentioned that the technology is there today. So what do you think are the sort of the barriers to uptake? Is it the cost of investment, the capital cost, or is it just fear of something new and there's that kind of inertia to change, or is it moving ahead as fast as it possibly can?
No, I think it's a normalized adoption rate. Look, I mean, there's no obstacles. I don't think cost is an obstacle because a lot of what you deploy from sustainability is actually pretty economically feasible because you generate savings and then you're improving, your occupants or visitors' experience. So there's a tangible and intangible values. It's more the adoption rate, and we've seen quite good adoption rate as of today, but I see this trend is picking up. And certainly with the push factor that I talked about, we'll see more and more happening in the market.
Now, another sort of ongoing discussion and ambition in this region is the development of smart cities and happier communities, using technology to integrate services, whether it's transport or security or whatever. Where do green buildings and smart buildings fit into the smart city puzzle? And how do you see the development of that sort of more holistic data environment going?
I think KPMG highlighted that from 2018 till 2022, the smart city industry has doubled, over $2.5 billion. So it's in the Middle East. So there's a lot of pickup in that space. Now, taking a step back, when you're actually deploying a smart building, you're enabling the foundation to build a smart city and smart communities. And here I'm highlighting the communities, which is an integral part as well of the city. Now, what that means is you're going to be able to drive more sustainable, more efficient, and again, better experience for the occupants of the city by leveraging certain technologies across the board. It could be anything to do, for example, how do I ensure the public safety, right? And how do I have the right response rate? If I'm deploying the right technology for supporting the fire department or the policing, or even just the alarm transport from a car accident, that's something that we all want to address. How do I engage with the citizens? Should the citizen witness a certain requirement that requires the city operators to interfere? So that's an engagement model that is also required. How do we optimize the operation and maintenance without causing an disturbance to the occupants of the city? How do we ensure that we have an integrated mobility model between traffic, transportation, streetlights, or even garbage collection? All of these aspects come together. And by doing all this, how do I ensure also the energy efficiency? I mean, we all witness, we drive at night and we see street lights. How do we get it much more connected? How do we know when do we need to maintain, replace, adjust? All of these aspects are benefits. And if I pick some examples, a great example is the new administrative capital in Egypt. Huge development, very, very smart, integrated, looking at the city operation, but also looking at the city surveillance. If you look at the Riyadh is listed, just gained 18 points on the Global Smart City Index. It is now ranked 5 in the G20 cities. If you look at the UAE, from Masdar to Sustainable City to Zayed Smart City, a lot of focus, Festival City, a lot of focus on deploying these solutions for multiple benefits that I referred to. And I believe more and more we'll see that, in particular when you look at our part of the world where you have a lot of communities, this integration between the services provided in the community and the users, occupants of the community is becoming also a requirement to be smart, where it creates a differentiating value prop for the developer. So something to look at, but certainly picking up a lot of momentum in the region, Richard.
Okay, fantastic. And one final question about Honeywell. So Honeywell is one of the sort of the big names of technology, and it's been around forever and in the Middle East for decades. But as a company, it has changed and been through many iterations as well. So how do you see, in response to what we've just been talking about, the shifting technologies and the drive for green buildings and smart cities, but also the shift from to cloud-based services and to different relationship models with clients and users and other companies? How do you see Honeywell's approach changing to sort of embrace and benefit from the new opportunities from this shift?
I mean, I think we're lucky. We've been in the region for over 60 years now, and full-fledged operation with all the technology, operation team, service team, all available here with a very strong partner network. What's happening, if you look at the industry itself, it's going through a transformation, the whole building industry. And again, COVID kind of pushed more into us being self-aware about the environment where we live, where we operate. And as a company with all this heritage and operating in buildings, we pivoted very fast many years back into more of the digital transformation around looking at not only the platforms that brings buildings together and cities together, but also looking at the edge devices that becomes smart at the edge. And by connecting the two together, then you're going to be able to have a unique kind of building of the future offering. And what we learned in the journey is that there are specifics, and now we become a bit more, if you want, detailed on what do users want. So we look at use cases and say, okay, if you're a visitor of the building, from the minute you get to the building, to the parking lot, to actually getting registered, to the meeting room you're attending, there is a journey for this user that we look at how do we enhance it through technology all along the way. But then if you're actually operating or working in a building, then you have a different use cases. And then if you're the operator of the building, you have a different use cases. So now we're looking at how do we actually enhance these use cases depending on the specific requirement of certain segments in the buildings. So a lot going on. I'm pretty excited with a lot of the technological advancement, and really the future is going to be pretty exciting.
Well, George Bou Mitri, President of Honeywell Building Technologies in the Middle East, Turkey and Africa, thank you so much for your time today. I wish you lots of success on the road ahead. As you say, it's very exciting times, and it's fantastic to have this opportunity to talk with you. So good luck, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you, Richard, and it's been great talking with you, and look forward for additional discussions. Thank you.
Thank you.